Hey everyone, this build's Flashbang. Interestingly, not only does it feature the Aorta, but also required the jammer, so a bit of a mix-up. Welcome back everyone to another build challenge video. So as always, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and hopefully share my videos with anyone you think might be interested in. Today I'm going to be looking at the Aorta generator and a build that I call the Flashbang, which will make sense for you in a little bit when you see why we need the jammer. But the Aorta is a hot piece of garbage, to be honest. It definitely needs some work. If you haven't already seen my patch prediction video, the main thing holding this generator back, I think, is the post-recovery EN supply is too small compared to generators with much shorter EN recharge delays, such as the 20C. The Aorta would seemingly be a very good aerial generator given that post-recovery EN supply. The problem is that by the time your EN recharge delay is up, you've basically fallen to the ground already. And so before I optimize around this generator, I would just say that the EN recharge delay on this generator probably needs to be brought between these energy specialization generators and the 20C to create a hybrid. And I also would say that the capacity should be 3,000, just like the NGI, the difference being the capacity, the total capacity if you're willing to let it regenerate. But nevertheless, we are going to optimize a build around the Aorta. So let's look at first, what is this generator unique for? Well, the post-recovery EN supply is good, meaning that if you do redline the generator, you get rewarded by having a shorter total time to go up to your full capacity. It has reasonable energy firearm specialization, nothing specializing in it, but you can use energy weapons with this weapon if you'd like. And it also has a reasonable capacity at 3,000, a little bit less than some of the typically really light generators. And that is the other piece that makes the Aorta unique, which is the extreme lightweight. There is, I think, only one, two with the Ling Tai, which is kind of niche, and the Joso generator. There's only 3 generators that are lighter than it, and each of those comes with major compromises as well. But the Aorta will also give us access to really good post-recovery EN supply. And also, I think the one thing that I can also kind of build around on this is the fact that it converts your expansion to Coral version. The Pulse Armor version I don't really think is that much more spectacular. I think that the only thing that really makes a big difference is the Assault Armor getting converted to true damage. So I was going to try to make a build that will make the Assault Armor being used as a stagger punish incentivized. The other thing is to take advantage of the extreme lightweight, but again, if you're going to run a very light build, then usually you can make the 20C work. It's only the difference of about 1,000 weight, and it's almost always better to just compromise on the head or the arms to do that. So we really had to run a build that was extremely finicky with the weight requirements, i.e. we would need pieces that were not negotiable, and it was going to make it very hard to sacrifice anything in order to keep our weight at our target level. You'll notice that the build is currently moving at 354. I figured that with the Aorta's extreme disincentive to dodging a lot, because you really don't have a lot of energy to work with, you're going to need passive boost speed in order to dodge missiles and without QBing. And so running a lightweight seemed to be the crux of the issue. A unique piece that really stood out to me right off the bat was going to be the main dish. So the main dish offsets the weakness of the EN recharge delay quite dramatically, although it does hurt our booster efficiency when we don't already have very much energy to play with. But that's okay, because the build is not going to be doing a lot of dodging as is. We don't have a lot of capacity. We're not going to be able to chase very well, so we really have to find a way to make do without dodging. So the main dish comes with an extremely high amount of stability at a weight that we typically wouldn't be able to pair with a lightweight generator. The Coral Gen gives us enough EN supply to also squeeze out a reasonable EN supply efficiency with our payload too. So yeah, the main dish, very rare to see that on a lightweight. Something else that I kind of realized was going to be needed is that the Aorta was going to need some help finding windows to get your impact regenerated. The first thing I went for was the PP buckler. As always, this is the lightweight shield of choice. Even though it doesn't have as many deploys as the PS, what it does do is completely shut down any impact buildup. When you can parry, say, a Zimmerman, you're still, or like double Zimmermans, you're still going to take a good chunk of impact buildup, even if you parry it well, whereas the PP buckler effectively completely shuts down any attack that you hit, other than just resetting your timer to get your impact regenerated. So a lot of times lightweights will use this when they don't have a huge stability pool, as it will make the difference between, you know, being able to block 5 or 6 Zimmerman salvos versus being able to block perpetually as long as you time it well. Granted, it's a very high skill item, and this build is very high skill required, and so I won't beat around the bush on that front. But yeah, the PB buckler was the first thing. The second piece that I was kind of working on to like sort of deciding was between the jammer and the Yule launcher. I did find that the Aorta's regen window was just too long though, so the Yule was not going to work for us, even though it was quite a nice tool in most cases when you want to get your impact regenerated. The Aorta just was not going to cooperate on that front. So if we're going to run the jammer and we're going to be having this really high stability pool on a lightweight, the jammer kind of forces most fights into close range. And so making a build that could just perpetually stagger over and over and over and not give the opponent a chance to stagger punish us was going to be kind of like the strategy here. We don't really get a stagger punish of our own, which means that even if we win the first stagger race, we still are under the gun to prevent them from staggering us. And so I realized that we had to run with the most heavy threatening tool type in close quarters, which I think is pistols. They're better than shotguns because they can't be parried so easily, and they have sort of like a sustained fire and a higher capacity of total impact and accumulative impact that they can put out in one magazine. That said, we're being extremely limited because of the amount of defensive tools we have, so I had to go with the Ducket over the Coquelette despite its higher impact per second and accumulative impact per second in short bursts, because we need a larger capacity to offset builds that have shields or lightweights that can just dodge the first half of our magazine. And also we need the range advantage of the Ducket over the Coquelette, as one of our toughest matchups is definitely going to be Kites, requiring extensively well-played jammers in order to sort of leapfrog up to them, body them into the corner of the map, and then pounce on them once we're close enough. The booster was also a bit of an interesting choice here between the SPD, the Alula, and the Gills. I ended up going with the Alula, though, as we need the assault boost thrust. Again, because they haven't nerfed the thrust on the Alula, it's really not a hard toss-up between this one and the Gills, because this is fast enough, and we really need the ability to minimize the amount of time that we're having to assault boost chase people. Despite its EN consumption on AB, it really doesn't matter in this game, to be honest. EN consumption doesn't vary that much. Like, you can even see the Gills, it's 391 versus 435. It's like barely a 10% difference, but that thrust makes all the difference as you gap close much quicker if you have a higher total threshold of velocity. You'll note that we're a little bit outside the QB reload time wait, which is a necessary compromise. And honestly, because we're running pistols, it's not like we want to be spam dodging anyways. We just want to have access to dodge double nukes quite quickly. And 0.41 is good enough. We don't really need the Gills. The only other nice thing about the Gills would have been the upward thrust, but again, it's just not worth giving up that AB thrust and the higher passive thrust as of now. If they ever nerf the Alula, then for sure, we'll take the Gills. Acellus, this one was a tough call between Abbott and Acellus, but the Abbott would have been nice for the jammer when shooting at range, but the truth is that I want every advantage when we're in the smoke, and so it forces people to come into close range, and especially for lightweights, making it so that they just cannot spam dodge us unless they're running the Gills and dumping all their energy. The Acellus was the way to go if you're going to run the Ducket. Just make it so that every shot is on point. Now, if we're going to run double Duckets, then there's only one arm that actually can manage the recoil fired full auto without interrupting and letting recoil regen, which is, interestingly enough, the Wrecker arms. So yeah, main dish Wrecker arms is necessary here. From there, I wanted the legs that gave us just enough weight to get this 350's boost speed without like opening up too much more weight threshold. Granted, I could run the 422s and that would let me get close to the same speed, but then we give up the jump distance, which is going to be really helpful with the jammer and like trying to like get out of the smoke quickly and break lock with opponents. So yeah, we needed a lightweight leg that gave us roughly the load limit that you see here and had good jump distance. So that was pretty essential. Couldn't make the knock legs work, obviously. It's just a little bit too much weight limitations to prevent the main dish from being paired, which is one of the main things that we really want to do. It's one of the most unique cores to be pairing with the Aorta generator. Okay, after that, it was basically just the headpiece, so I just wanted to take as much stability and good scan refresh time and scan distance so that I can reset myself after smoking with the jammer launcher. So the cast warhead was the no-brainer. The mine beta head would have been nice to just open up that stability pool even a bit more, but alas, I didn't have the weight to make it work. So the cast warhead sort of was forced here. We want to be able to jam or like scan, and then if we need to jam, we can, and then we can rapidly rescan again. And this thing has only a 3.6 second delay between scan cycles, so that kind of worked out nicely. The general idea with this build is actually going to be stagger locking people, then jamming, resetting our own stability, and then also using the shield to prevent any significant amounts of damage if ever we are caught out and we aren't able to get to the jammer and whatnot. Making use of the PB buckler is going to be essential, especially for some of like the Etsi orbit kites and whatnot and rifle kites. Understand that just shooting with your pistol and not using the PB buckler is a waste. And so between shots, the ducket has a slower fire rate. It really allows you to weave in PB bucklers. You really want to be working that PB buckler and like looking at your opponent's weapons and asking yourself, which one's the big threat that I want to nerf? Do they have an LRB? Do they have Zimmerman on one hand? Do they have, I don't know, like bazookas and whatnot? You want to really know what weapon you're going to be looking to block to mitigate your impact buildup per second. Another really nice thing too is on wake up, if you jam, when you stagger someone and then you jam on them, they're going to be like double Zimmermans are going to be really incentivized to double blast with the Zimmermans to try to catch you before you leave the smoke, which makes it very easy to prevent the stagger shot from making it unparryable for both. So on wake up, it's a very good habit to jam them and then assume they're going to double blast the Zimmerman to try to stagger you and just parry both. The PB buckler also it's crazy how far you can work this shield when you're like almost staggered. You'll see a lot in the PvP clips that like when this shield just becomes clutch in the sense that I'm almost staggered, but it doesn't matter because when I block something with this, it completely shuts it down. Especially counter assault armor as well. So usually we'll kick as our punish and then jam them and then try to create space and then get our impact regenerated. If they try to rush us down, we've still got the double pistols and the PB buckler, which can really swing fights if they're getting greedy. A lot of times they're not going to focus on dodging. They're going to get just super aggressive and try to finish off the stagger bar, and they're going to underestimate how quickly we build up stagger with double ducats while completely shutting down any of their offense for at least 3 flashes of the shield. And then finally, for certain lightweights, you can just go immediately into Assault Armor Punish, as it'll take off a huge chunk of their health, given that it bypasses resistances. It also works on heavier builds. I would just say don't use the Assault Armor early in the fight. Take a kick and like pistol punish and then jam and reset. Try to save the Assault Armor for the stagger that will basically finish off the fight, as that way they don't have the chance to pop Pulse Armor and rush you while you don't have an expansion to counter. You always want to have the Assault Armor in your back pocket in case they try to pop Pulse Armor and rush you. You can counter Pulse Armor with the Assault Armor if you'd like. I don't think it's necessarily a huge necessary thing because we don't have a great stagger punish to follow up with anyways, and so it's okay to just let them pop Pulse Armor, jam, and reset your own, and just keep saving the Assault Armor as like an insurance, either if you get staggered and they try to melee punish you, or you can save it as the final punish that just chunks out a huge amount of their AP. With tanks, I would say pop it early just because countering their Pulse Armor and getting them at 2,000 impact built up is a nice shortcut to just getting the fight into an AP advantage for yourself so that you can force them to come to you rather than you having to chase them, as the Aorta is really tricky to chase any builds with, so it's really weird to see it paired with close range weapons. But this was actually the most viable build that I have come up with so far, and I have been able to beat S-rank players with it without too much issues. Just certain matchups can be tricky, so we'll see that in the PvP, but that's basically the build. Just a heads up that Assault Armor does have an interesting sort of bug interaction with Pulse Armor deployed at the exact right time, which you can see stuffs it completely. But let's jump into some PvP. We're going to go against a super heavy double Zimmerman build with double missiles rather than the shield or a melee punish. I'd say this is probably the worst case scenario, as this build does not have a direct hit punish, which means it wants to end the fight quite quickly. The tankier they are, the more times you need to stagger them without getting staggered yourself. And the less percentage your Coral Assault Armor will actually do. I do think that this needs to be increased as well. I think that the Assault Armor damage on Coral Gem should be increased relative to non-coral assault armor, and just bypassing resistances is not enough on its own, I don't think, to make it actually shine in any way. But yeah, enjoy the match. The main thing here just to look at is notice how the reload speed of the jammer is longer if it's holstered. So when you are beneficial, like if you're not actively engaged in combat, you're trying to get space, swapping to the jammer to get the reload regenerated faster if you just recently used it is really useful, and also ensuring that you're reloading your pistols when the opportunity is presented is also going to be a huge thing. Going above them is probably the best way to make the jammer confusing for people, by the way. It also makes it really hard to reacquire you because they gotta find you manually, which, as you can see, is working quite well here. The jammer had a lot of interesting sort of interactions, and this video isn't meant to center on it, but you will have to practice a lot with it to kind of get the hang of the fact that they keep lock on you when they're inside the smoke with you. And also when you're flying away, rather than popping the smoke on yourself, shooting it ahead of you and then flying through it is a more effective way to kind of leverage the jammer. Yeah, in general, you'll just notice that I'm looking to use my assault armor as the stagger punish, and then just trying to stagger lock them over and over and use the jammer to buy myself time to get my cumulative impact regenerated, or to make them lose me and let me get the jump on them, which will usually just insta-stagger builds again, because the double pistols with the wrecker arms is relentless. It's basically pre-nerf double pistols. This opponent is also not stagger firing the Zimmermans as much, but part of the thing is the jammer's kind of forcing their hand in that way, because they can't shoot me from further range like they normally would to stagger. They have to rush in, and there's a brief window where they can shoot me, and they kind of have to decide, am I going to try to stagger and only get one, or am I going to run the risk of not getting anything from the second one? There's a couple moments too from playing double Zimmermans where they just always pull both triggers, I find, no matter the skill level. Especially like right after pulse armor wake up, a lot of times if you're almost staggered, they're going to try to go for the double blast just to ensure that one's going to stagger you. In theory they shouldn't, because they can stagger extend with the other one if they get you, but if you're not like one tap for sure, then a lot of times they don't want to risk it and will just go for the kick punish. But yeah, very high skill required to leverage the PB buckler against double Zimmermans. You really got to be watching those hands and looking for opportunities to plant the jammer in a way that's going to make it so that they can assault boost shuffle you without accidentally whipping off into the wrong direction and giving you space, allowing you to fly away and get your impact regenerated. Double Zim with melee and the reverse joint kick. So another reason we run a shield is actually to stuff kick so that we can basically go point blank. Another tool you can also do against Zimmermans is just like face plant right against them, make their Zimmerman stuff and whiff, and that way you get to save a shield charge if moments ever arise. The best times for this is definitely right after stagger wake up. A lot of times they, because they can't move, you can really position right next to them, get the jammer out, fire it into their face, and let them waste through Zimmermans while you're face planted against them. That, or they have to buy time, which lets you know to use the shield instead. They have to like back off. Not too much to say here, other than just making sure that you're ready, always saving a shield charge to prevent either a slash like those, or the reverse joint kicks, and just constantly pressuring up close to them so that they are struggling with the double Zim whiffs, and they can't really use the reverse joint kick as effectively. Don't ever burn out your shield. Like if you're gonna get staggered, just let yourself get staggered. Don't if you don't feel confident in the parry because of this circumstance, it's much worse to have the PB buckler overheated, and so that's a delicate balance though, because it is so good at just ensuring you don't get staggered basically no matter what. Like how much impact you have built up, it's just so little actually gets through that it's usually just marginal at best. This is a pretty sneaky little thing you can do too. The jammer will make melee lunges immediately slash, which wastes their lunge. So you'll see here I back him into the cloud and his lunge immediately whiffs because he can't cancel it, as the smoke just forces the slash right away. Another type of matchup that can give you trouble is certain elevator builds, as this build doesn't really have great aerial because of the Aorta's long EN recharge delay, necessitating you fall for a long time when your battery's down. Plus the Alula is just not working with us in that regard, and that it's burning so much energy. I think the main thing is just saving enough energy to actually go up and down with them, and then you really have to just be pairing, because a lot of times these builds have nukes that they try to leverage once you've burned out your battery. The plasma rifle is also quite good against the PP buckler because of the long duration hit and the fact that it splashes, so like if you're moving forward, it'll hit you behind your shield. I think what I usually would suggest in this case is if you can get the assault punish early, that lets you get the health lead and forces them to actually pressure you. At that point you can just start smoking and force them to come down to the ground. You do got to be careful of certain weapon types though, like splash, grenade launchers, ear shots, plasma missiles and plasma rifles that splash, because they can manually target those into the cloud, which is unfortunate. But, it doesn't mean it's a direct counter. You just have to make sure you're hopping out of the cloud and keep the jammer in your hand so that it's reloaded sooner, and then you can pop another cloud if they ever force you out of the existing one. So double Etsi Alula knock legs with the Moonlight or Redshift are probably one of the hardest counters to us, just because they don't need to melee punish us up close, which makes our assault armor kind of not a great insurance option for if we lose the stagger race. But the second thing is they have really great jump distance as well, and they also usually have a generator that's better on the ground than us. So the jammer is very hard to make work because the fact that it doesn't break lock. I do think that change in my patch notes needs to happen where it forces manual aim for 2 seconds, regardless of if both people are in the clouds or not. And then it should recycle that every time you fly through it. But alas, this is the game we have. Anyways, these matchups can be very tough because the Etsi can also hit you further than the pistols. So the burden is really on you to pressure them and try to gap close and get the stagger early. I would alternate fire the pistols in order to make it a bit easier. And also, I wasted my jammer here, so you should actually try to fire the jammer like in advance, kind of where the fight's going to be. Whether that be manual aim or not, it's up to you. But I wasted it here. It just kind of goes somewhere where neither of us are going to use it. And yeah, I don't really get much use out of it. You can also save it for when your battery's almost out, so that way you can like go get your battery reset. Or if you're losing the stagger race, you can kind of like restart and try again. Tank fights are basically just going to be an exercise in parry skills, and then also prioritizing parrying the bazookas rather than the Truenos is like more valuable. The Javelin Alpha is also really good against shields, by the way, now because of the splash around. So you kind of want to not be moving forward at the moment that you parry Javelin Alphas if you can. I mean, obviously don't get too much tunnel vision on that, but just worth noting that some of the impacts and damage is going to bleed through if you block it while moving forward. I'm going to leapfrog towards him while using the jammer to try to create like little pockets of safety, and also to just trip up their lock-ons and their Trueno lock-on times. I'm not going to get too greedy for the assault armor too early on this case, because when I do it, there's a good chance he's going to punish me if I don't have any parry charges left. So I'm trying to just soften them up first and just get enough damage in that the assault armor is going to basically end the fight or near to, or counter their pulse armor so that I get a second 3 stagger. In this case, I end up just doing that, being ready to parry on wake up because a lot of times are going to try to hit you with a nuke. And yeah, that way you just get like a huge chunk of the fight's health like taken care of, and you also get to restagger them quicker too, as you don't need to build up so much to restagger the tank. Once you have the health lead, make them come to you. Don't waste your energy. The Aorta is very poor for energy resources, and so you really got to try to force the opponent to come to you and use your jammer to prevent their missile lock-ons. Don't even let them get a lock, because like if it's plasma, then they're going to be able to launch it and it's going to land in the smoke anyway, so just keep it perpetually on you so that they never have the chance to get the lock-on. for Lammergeier fights, I like to try to set an ambush at the beginning of the fight, try to wait for them to come near me, and then like just hiding in my smoke the whole time. No, granted, this won't work on some more experienced players, but in that case, regardless of whether they're experienced or not, you're going to try to let them burn out the majority of their coral gen. So just like hide in the smoke, keep it in your hand so it reloads quickly, and when they fire plasma missiles or coral missiles to try to manually flush you out, just have the second charge ready to shoot off, like leapfrog over to it. It's like shoot it before you leapfrog, by the way, just because you don't want to give them even a chance to get that half-second lock on with the plasma missiles. And then just keep rinse repeating. Usually takes about 30 seconds. Here I end up getting an ambush successfully. I get the drop on them. They're running the hammer here, so I have to be ready to parry either that or picks. But fortunately, it doesn't take very much to get a significant health lead here. That's a nice thing. Don't chase the Lammergeier. Use the smoke. Flush out the missiles. It's going to take some practice learning how to shrug missiles off. As they do reacquire you if you leave the smoke, so it's kind of like a weird sort of balancing act you'll have to learn. I feel like this video is almost a jammer video at this point, but I'll make a build video on the jammer specifically at some other point. So double pistols present an interesting dilemma. Now, mostly they ought to be running the Abbott because they need some help at medium range where we don't, because the jammer's allowing us to run the SLS. Granted, some people will just forego a lot of those matchups and just lose to anything rifling or kiting and then run the SLS anyways. So what you want to do in these cases is deploy your PP buckler and only shoot the right side when they're shooting their guns. So like at the start of the fight, most of the times you're going to get aggressive right away and just start shooting both pistols. But you have to master cycling the PB buckler exactly in its IG window, and you want to use that. I usually say do it like 2 times. You want to save the last 2 charges for pulse blade slashes in this case, and kicks. But in general, it just tilts the impact fight heavily in your favor, especially if they're lightweight. They don't have a lot of health or stability. And yeah, you're basically going to completely shut down their pistols, and ideally you'll bleed out half their magazines. If they're running Coke Goulettes, they actually run out of magazines sooner, so it's even better for the PB buckler. If they're running Duckets, then unfortunately the Ducket has a larger magazine, so you are going to have to be a bit more evasive and try to like more deliberately parry the salvos if they're firing them at the same time, and then or dodging some of the magazine. But yeah, the same goes for the Sampus as well, by the way. They just got too small of a magazine. The PB buckler can do a lot of work against those pistols. At least for the first opening salvo. At that point you got to try to get space and reset the impact race if you didn't stagger them. Also, yeah, parrying the pulse blade is going to be huge. If they're running assault armor, that's actually good for us. We can parry it. I didn't realize he was running assault armor, but now I would know that rather than wasting my own assault armor to counter, I'll just parry it with the PB buckler and save my assault armor either as the final punish, or if I lose a stagger race, I can cancel their pulse blade punish. Okay, to end off the video, I am just going to show two variants. I had one that substituted the jammer for the Yule, although I found it was just too weak against various kite builds. It just couldn't gap close with the Aorta. It was too much close quarters utility only. Although it was better for double Zimms, to be honest, because you could restagger so easily and get your impact regenerated. And then the other one's going to be sort of a Lammergeier-esque build that I came up with a minigun stun gun pairing, but just for the fun of it, you guys can see those two builds in action.